Thank you so much for being here and connecting with the Spark TV community. We've known each other for a little while now. I remember we were at a networks event. I think I met you. We were both speaking at a marketing event together.
How long ago was that? That was like 3 years ago, maybe 4.
Oh no, it's got to be more than that.
So I started my business 4.5 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I remember at the time, I thought you just transitioned. So you were talking about how you started writing really long form blog content about social media.
Yeah.
And so I think we might have just been at that kind of the precipice of starting the business.
Yeah. How funny. And now, like, funnily enough, I went from like writing these like crazy long form blogs to like going into a podcast to now. I actually just posted on Instagram last night. I'm like, I'm over Instagram. I'm over all of the changes. I want to go back to like long form blogs again. So I feel like I'm coming full circle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's really interesting as well. We're creating a bit of content and I'm like, I'm so over hearing that there's one way to do things, you know, like, it's like, is it blogs? Is it a podcast? Is it YouTube? Is it, you know, write a long caption or a short caption? I'm like, oh, so I totally appreciate the I'm over Instagram sentiment.
Oh, I know. I just feel like I'm like the ex-Instagram girl. And like I used to get, like I understood it when it was like long captions. I'm like, I can do that stuff. But yeah, I just feel like am I getting old or am I just getting...
I was just about to say, I think we're getting too old for this social media business.
No, I was just listening to myself and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh, that's hilarious. Well, so before we just start chatting, why don't we kick things off by talking about said business? So what's your background? So from a career point of view, and how did you actually get to starting your own business?
Yeah. Okay. So back like 4.5 years ago, I was working in marketing for a real estate agency in Brizzy. And I started my blog writing. So I was like learning all about social media. All of my friends were still like going out every weekend. And I was just like staying at home writing these blogs going like, I just want to learn as much as I can. I feel like I'd finally after years found something that I actually enjoyed doing. And it had taken like over 10 years to get there. So I was like, this is amazing. I am all in. And I feel like I'm not a really big human design person, but I've since found out I'm a generator. And like, once you find your purpose, it's like, you're just lit up and you just kind of want to do it forever, all the time, 24/7. And I was like, yeah, I resonate with that. That was totally me. So I went from kind of like writing the blogs into starting a podcast, into people asking me like, hey, can you please like manage my social media for me? And I was like, oh, like this could be a business. That's amazing. And I remember I went to Europe for a month. So we did like yacht week, did all of the things. And I was like sitting on a beach, overlooking Positano. And
wow, take me there now, please.
I know, like sipping on a limoncello. And I said to my partner, I was like, I actually think like I could quit, which is just was the hugest thing for me. Like I'd never thought about not being in corporate. I was like, I actually think I could make this a business. And I was like, I probably need, because I'm such an analytical person, I was like, probably need like another client and a half. And I could probably, and he was just like, look, why don't you just do it? Like, what is the worst that could happen? And it like clicked this thing in my mind. And I was like, what is the worst that could happen? Like I would go back to my corporate job. And so started a business and was managing social media clients for about 6 months. Then decided I want to create a digital course and went all in on doing that. So this is a really long story now, Danielle. Sorry.
No, that's good. That's good. No, context is good. Context is good. Go for it.
Like, how far back do you want me to go? But so went to Bali for a couple of months, and that was like another big thing for me. I was like, what, I can actually like leave Brisbane and like go and do this thing that just felt completely wild to me. And so I was like knocking over like all of these little beliefs that I'd held for so long, and like, so funny, you're so conditioned to, you know, even the idea of going overseas for a couple of months and not having a job. I was like, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So decided, I'm going to create this course. Had no idea how to do it. Spent 6 of the 8 weeks in Bali, just like drinking cocktails, and then decided
that's where all of the good ideas happen.
Totally. And I was like, okay, well, I need to, you know, come back with something. So I wrote this like manuscript, like 50,000 word manuscript, and it was like everything I knew about social media, and came back and I was like, okay, I need to turn this into a course, and like did it the hard way. Launched the course. It was beyond my wildest dreams successful. Like I shocked myself and I was like, oh, this is so exciting. So like another like belief knocked over. I was like, oh, I don't have to work crazy hours in order to do this. Like, this is so cool. And then like made the mistake that every course creator makes and says, you know, if I've done it once, I can get more success by like creating another course and then creating another course. And by that stage I was pregnant with my first little boy. And I decided I was going to create a new course every 6 weeks and then market it. And then I realized, it's like,
wow, how did that go? I'm stressed out already.
I know. And they were not on subjects where it's like set and forget. So like the first one was Facebook ads, changes all the time, right? The second one was podcasting, doesn't change as much, but you've still got to update it.
Yeah.
And the third one was going to be Instagram stories. And I was like, I'm burnt out. Like I can't do this again. And so went back to kind of like the one like flagship course. And from there had my little boy and decided I'm going to teach other people online courses because it's the most amazing thing in the world, and created a group coaching program called Launchpad, and have been growing that for the last 18 months, coming up to 2 years, which is crazy.
Yeah, that is incredible. And what did you find when you went from having all of the courses to one flagship? Like, how did that change the game for you?
It was honestly like, I say this, like, this is literally what I say to people that join Launchpad now. Like, what happens is it's kind of like, it's hard enough to create one digital product, right? Like everyone's like, oh, it's passive income, you know, it's amazing. And I just go, it's so not passive income. Like it's leveraged and you've got to do so much work. Like you've got to create the course and the curriculum. You've got to find product market fit first. You've got to like stand out because there's so many people doing it these days. Then you've got to create a funnel, and then you've got to launch it. You've got to optimize the funnel. Like if you're trying to do that with more than one, maximum 2 products, like that's a recipe for burnout. Like it's a complete opposite of like the passive income that people go into digital courses for. And so like even just like having Launchpad as like my one and only product now, like we still spend so much time optimizing like the funnel and the data and all of those sorts of things, but it's just like an all-in focus, and it's like all roads lead to it. Like all of my, you know, marketing leads to it, all of, you know, everything leads to Launchpad. And then it's like optimizing one funnel to make it the best it could be. Then on the delivery side, like optimizing the curriculum to get the best results, which means better testimonials. And you're not kind of like doing this scattergun approach where like nothing's ever as good as it could possibly be. And yeah, it's honestly been business changing.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad personally that you said that, because literally I had this idea for a new course and I was like, please don't do this, Danielle. Please don't create something new. Sell what you have first. Yeah,
totally.
But it's so hard to not get excited and inspired.
You know, it's like, it's honestly the hardest thing. Like, I think if you really love and enjoy doing something and like creating new things, like I have to stop myself every day. Like I'm like, oh, I've got this amazing idea, and I'm like, no, like rein it back in.
Oh my God. I know. Yeah. Literally, I was awake at 3 o'clock in the morning with a new book idea. And I'm like, when are you going to write a book? Like, what is wrong with you?
You should. I would read your book, Danielle. I would love that.
Oh my God. Well, I'm very glad about that, because I think that I've wanted to be an author since I was little. And I think this is the year.
Exciting. I feel like book writing's like course creation, where it's like that upfront work and then you like reap the benefit forever on the back end. It's just like you need to commit to the work.
Yeah. And that's it. And it's really interesting that you said you went to Bali?
Yeah.
And took the time away, because that's literally what I was thinking. I'm like, I feel like I actually need to get out of my environment and just focus on one thing and actually just like smash it out.
Yeah. You have to let me know how it goes, because it's on my like wish list to do as well. And I keep like kind of putting it off. I'm like, oh, I'll do it next year. And I feel like I've had my babies now. The business is like running really smoothly. I'm like, okay, I'm in a good position that I could probably do it in the next year. So
yeah, definitely. Well, I will tell you how the experience goes. I've been doing lots of research and lots of buying of other people's books to kind of, you know, see, especially like comparing like self-published books and then books published on Amazon and then books published by a publisher. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do?
Yeah. What are you thinking? Are you thinking
I think I'm going to publish on Amazon.
Okay.
So it seems like the most, well, the easiest way to not be hands-on in fulfillment. So, and whilst it's like, you know, no one's like throwing me a book deal yet, that's right. Wait for book number 2. So then I'm like, Amazon seems like the best way to kind of get that reach, distribution, write it, and then I'm in charge of marketing it, but they're in charge of fulfillment. So that seems like the best approach.
Yeah. And I feel like the marketing's the fun part. I can see like
totally
your books in the background as like,
I'm obsessed. I've read like none of them.
Who has the time? Do you read with a Kindle?
No, I read with the physical books. I love it.
Yeah. So do you know what I do? Like I double up. This is so weird, but like I will download a book on a Kindle, and if I feel like it's a book that I'm going to come back to, or like I really enjoy, then I go and buy like the paperback version. So I have like
a special version.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So I've got like a dream of an office with like a big bookshelf. So I'm like, I want to have all the business books for when that happens.
Yeah, totally. I just find so something happens when I read. 2 things is I kind of rest my eyes a little bit because I'm on a laptop or a phone or an iPad 24 hours a day. So it kind of gets me away from a screen. But then just like magical happens when I read, and it's like my brain gets to stop for a minute, and like everything consolidates itself and ideas actually happen.
Yeah.
It's this really weird thing. So it actually takes me forever to read, because as soon as I like read a page, my brain just starts ticking away and I have to write things down. And it's just this weird experience.
No, I'm the same. And I get you on like we're on screens all the time. So it feels weird being on a Kindle, because it's like, oh, it's just another screen.
But it's got a really dull kind of interface, doesn't it? So it doesn't mess with your eyes as much.
Yeah. It still feels like a screen though.
Yeah. Yeah. True. I have not got into it. But mind you, I always kind of go, when you actually dedicate more time to reading, then maybe buy a device for it.
Totally. Yeah. You should have a newborn, because you have a lot of time at like 2 a.m. to read. But you need a Kindle because it's got the light and it's like pitch black dark. That's a story for another day.
Totally. Maybe not the best excuse to have a baby, but I'll put it on the pros list though.
Really, yeah. Pros, cons.
Oh my God, that's so good. So then how has your role as a business owner evolved over the last few years? So kind of going from corporate to, oh my God, people are approaching me around this thing that I love, and then testing new ideas. I take it you don't do any social media management. It's all about the course now. So how did that kind of evolve, and how did you as a business owner evolve?
Yeah, so I only had clients for maybe like 3 or 4 months.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it wasn't a really long time. And basically the way I did it was, I was like, I know I want to create this digital course. I need to like give myself some space. So for that 3 or 4 months, I took on double what is like a normal full-time client load. And I worked 24/7 to bankroll having like 3 or 4 months to basically give myself the space to create a course.
Wow, that's cool.
Totally risky. So I did that, had like 1 client by the time I got to Bali, created the course. And this was like August, like 2018. And then launched the course in like November. And by that stage, I was like down to like nothing. I was like, this needs to work out, because if it doesn't work out, like I just have to go back to service work, which was fine, but I didn't really want to do it.
Yeah.
So the digital course kind of launched, and then that sort of bankrolled me. So the launch was about 120K, but it was all profit pretty much, because there was no Facebook ads or anything. And I was like, that's amazing. That's going to like fund my 2019, which it pretty much did. And then I kind of started launching quarterly, and really like the big change in terms of like my place in the business was I was a course creator up until Launchpad launched. And so it was like me working by myself. I had no team. There was no one else really helping me out. And so I was like learning and doing everything myself, which I actually think is like an amazing way to do it, because you learn the back end of everything, and you learn how to do everything, which is amazing. but also it's a lot. But I do think it's important to do it.
I think it helps you value the work too. I think it helps you understand how long things should take, and that you're paying somebody else when you get there to actually do something that isn't kind of worth your time.
Yeah, I think 100%. I also think it can be like really challenging to then go from competently being able to do everything to then kind of like pass things over. And so like really that transition happened for me when Launchpad launched. And so the difference between Launchpad and like an online course is, you know, you create an online course, you put it out there, and then you market it, and that's pretty much, there's no delivery side. And so I launched Launchpad. The difference is it's like a hybrid. It's like one-to-one. It's a mastermind. It's curriculum. So it's curriculum based, and it's also group coaching. So there's no way that I could do all of the marketing and all of the delivery by myself. And so I did like a foundation launch, and I was like, we'll see how this goes. We had 40 clients come on board, and I hadn't created the full curriculum yet. So I was creating the curriculum, I was doing all of the coaching, I was doing the one-to-one calls, and I was like,
no.
Yeah, this is sinking me. Like it was like, it literally got to the point where I was like, okay, I have taken on way too much. I've bitten off like way more than I can chew. And so like even thinking about it, like I go back to that time and I'm like, oh my God, that was so much. So kind of like went from the high of like, yay, this is like, you know, like it's launched and it's been so successful, to like, oh my God, I've got to like service it all. And you need to do an amazing job, of course, because, you know, it's the first group going through and you've got to make sure you get results. And, you know, those, you know, these sorts of programs are really based on reputation. And so I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I need to scramble and get this sorted. And so I started building a team. And so we have 2 coaches inside of the program. We have a full-time, so 2 full-time coaches, full-time marketing assistant and sort of executive assistant, and then a VA as well. So we've got 4 people full-time now. And so kind of my transition has really been like going from like doing all of the things to like learning to release.
Yes, that's hard. That's very hard.
Yeah, it's really hard. And like learning to become a leader, like over the last year as well, which I feel like is a completely different skill set to marketing and, you know, to working by yourself. And I feel like I've really had to like learn that process as well. And I think like I've gotten to a point now where I feel really great about that, but it took me a year to learn that. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
How did you go actually transitioning out of doing everything to handing it over? Did you learn any lessons, actually onboarding people, or how did that process look?
Yeah, so I did it so poorly when I was first starting out.
Me too.
I didn't know, like, number one, like I didn't know. So what I've had to learn is that when you bring on a team, and especially like when you bring on employees over contractors, is that you can't expect, and it's not fair to expect, that they're going to do things to the same standard that you've done them when you've been doing it for the last 3 years, like full time, and they haven't, right? And so when I first started out, I think probably like the big learning I've had is like I coach my clients inside of Launchpad every single day. And I coach them from not being course creators or to not really knowing what they're doing course creation wise to becoming, you know, really competent course creators who can read data and who make decisions based on data and not emotion and all of those sorts of things. And like what I've realized, like the biggest learning is like, I have to coach employees in the exact same way. So it's like really becomes a relationship where you're kind of like coaching them to be the best employee they can possibly be, and doing that in a similar way to clients. And I think like that took me a year. And yeah, what was the question? But I feel like that's the biggest takeaway.
Yeah, well, it was more, how did that process look? Did you have any challenges, any like nuggets of wisdom that we can share with people who are onboarding their first employee?
Yeah. So probably like the biggest, like in terms of like the really practical side is so before I started hiring, I thought that what I needed was completely different to what I actually needed. And so I had a full-time coach come on board, and that was like the first hire. And what I actually needed was someone that could take away a lot of like the admin and a lot of like the marketing and all of that sort of side away from me. And so the coach started in a full-time capacity, and she was like, cool, I've got about like, 13, 14 hours of work. And that's when I kind of went, oh my gosh, I actually need to really think about what is it that I am best doing.
Yes.
And a lot of that is actually, the coaching side of the role, and what's best for me to like outsource and give to someone else. And so like making sure that you're hiring the right roles based on like where the gaps are in your business, and also making sure that you're hiring not because you like someone, because they end up being the exact same person as you, and like that's literally the opposite of what you need. And like going through the process of like making sure that they're confident at the thing that you hire them for. And yeah, I definitely didn't get that right the first time around.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. I love that, thinking about what you really need support on. So I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and they were talking about, so breaking down your tasks into $10 tasks versus $1,000 tasks.
Yeah.
So, so the idea is that the $1,000 tasks, they're the ones that you do. So you're the person on the podcast, you are the coach, you're doing all of those high value things. And the things like, once we get off this podcast, all the admin of putting it together, that's kind of the $10 task. There are people that do that really well, but it's probably not my skill set. And so kind of breaking everything down and going, right, what do I add no value to? I don't add any value editing a podcast, but I add value interviewing and being on podcasts and all of those things. So if you can kind of think about, okay, how do I get rid of all of those tasks so that I can do more of the super high value stuff? That's kind of, I totally got it wrong as well when I first started hiring.
And I think I think a lot of people will give you advice. So you hear like that textbook, like, you should outsource the tech, for example. And so like for me, what I realized is like my business is actually really unique to me. And so like, advanced funnel building, for example, like I actually think I'm the best person to do that. And so like that is probably unique to my own business. And it's not like the textbook, really when you hear about course creators, it's like outsource the tech, outsource all of that sort of thing. I actually think for me and my business and where I'm at, that's actually $1,000 an hour task for me.
Yeah.
So, like actually looking really critically and being like, okay, so where is like the most valuable use of your time, even if it's not like what other people will say for your business time? Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's, before we hit record, that was kind of something that we were talking about as well. Like just, there's a formula, but there is no formula, there's like, I was just saying, I'm tired of hearing about how my life will change if I just get on board with Reels.
Oh my God, don't even start.
So I love that, actually sitting down and understanding, where do you as a business owner add value, and how is your business different, and what is your vision for success and the business actually look like?
And what do you love? Like if you love doing something and you feel like, if you gave that to somebody else, it would make you sad, even if it's not the most logical decision, then keep it, because you start your business because you want to enjoy it. And so like, something like funnel building for me, I'm like, I actually started giving that to like a marketing person. Then I was like, oh, but like, I love this. Like, I just want to do this. Like, I miss this, So you can like design it the way that you want as well.
Yeah. Well, and that's like super exciting. I remember a few years ago now, I was really unhappy in my business. And, I just felt like I was doing everything because everybody else wanted me to do it that way. And I had to be this certain look and feel. And I was like, wow, you're an idiot. You're the boss. You're the one that gets to make all the decisions and to design this how you want. So,
but I think you're conditioned as well. Like for example, like we have a team meeting every week, and, like there's this perception that team meeting should be at 9:00 on a Monday morning. And it's like, but what if you don't have to do that? And like little things like that in my business, I've just done I'm like 9:00 Monday morning, and I'd wake up, I'm like, oh, I just don't feel like doing a 9:00 Monday. And it's like, but you don't have to, like, you don't have to do that. So like, but you can to do it. And it takes you so long to realize that you're conditioned and that you can change it.
Yeah. Well, and I think coming from corporate into business,
Totally.
like it makes it a bit worse because I was the same. Like I would sit when we had an office, I would sit at my desk going, oh, I have to sit here till 5 o'clock to set an example for all of my employees. I'm like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm like, honestly, Danielle, I feel like this is something that I've just realized in myself just recently. Like it actually gets to be really, really fun if you want it to be. Like it doesn't have to just be work. And that sounds like the most like obvious thing in the world, but I feel like you start a business and it's like, oh, this is so exciting, this is so fun, and you're running on adrenaline. And then it becomes like a business and you're like, okay, I need to like, you know, make sure that this is right, and it gets serious. And then like where I'm at the moment, I don't know if it's like, maybe it is kind of that like 4 or 5 years in, you kind of go, okay, rethink the way that you're kind of like, when did things get so serious? Like when did you lose like the fact that it's like super fun and you get to enjoy every day if you want to, like it's a choice.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that so much. One of the things, so when I did my kind of start of year business visioning situation, one of the things I wrote down was that I didn't want to start work before midday on Mondays and that I wanted to knock off at midday on Fridays. And like, of course I work on the weekends, right? Like there's something I go, oh, I just have to do this. I have to do this, or I'm watching boring TV. So I'm just doing some admin. So of course I work outside of those times, but I just know that Monday mornings feel poo and Friday afternoons should be playtime. So I've just factored that in now.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I've had to become a lot more like regimented with my time since having kids. So even you just saying like I have to do, or like I do work on the weekends, I'm like, oh, I actually kind of like wish that I could, you know, go back to the days when I was doing work on the weekends. Like those days are long gone for me. But anyway.
But I think that is like case in point in you make it work for your life.
Totally.
You know, it doesn't have to be Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, because that's how corporate works.
Yeah.
It's actually what is your lifestyle? What are your life choices? And how can you build a business around that? And I think we're so lucky now that we have remote teams as well. It kind of makes it a little bit easier, I think, to put that on everyone else as well and say, look, if you want to work 9 to 5, that's fine. But what's important is the work, is getting the work done and enjoying the work and delivering for customers and all that kind of stuff. So
100%. Yeah. And I think like realizing as well, like, why did you start your business in the first place? Like where so I've got a 6-week-old at the moment. I don't know if you know, but she's like a little gorgeous little thing. But I had my first little one 2.5 years ago, and I actually like don't even really remember like the first like 3 to 6 months of his life, because I was so like driven and so like focused on, oh no, like almost like this is almost like, not that he's a distraction, but like I still have all of my goals and I feel so torn between like kids and business. And so I spent a lot of that time like kind of trying to juggle the two, and it never really worked out. And so I feel like this time around I've got this real awareness around like, okay, actually no, I started this business so that I could do whatever I wanted and have the freedom to like spend time with my kids and, you know, all of that sort of thing. So stop and enjoy it and actually do it. Yeah.
It's so funny you say that. So I had a coaching call with one of the Spark members yesterday, and that's exactly what she said. She said, you know what, I just turned around. So she's got I think a 2-month-old. She's like, I just turned around and realized that the only time I see him is when I'm feeding. And she's like, oh my God, what? And she's like, and she literally had this epiphany moment, and she's changing the way she's doing everything in business. And it's incredible. But I think like almost back to our last point, which is if you don't step back and really ask yourself what you want your business to look like, you do just turn around in like, well, God, I'm 10 years in now. You do just turn around and you go, oh my God, how did all of this time pass? And I'm in this situation that I'm not happy with.
Yeah. And why did I decide to do this in the first place?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I know. And it's funny. Well, it's funny that because I feel like all my businesses have just kind of been on whims, you know, like, oh, this is a good idea. This is a good idea. Or this is the next thing. This is the next thing. And it wasn't until, and that's kind of where I got to, I think it was 2019, where I was like, oh my God, I've built this horrific thing that I don't love.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, cool though, you get to change it. You're in the driver's.
Like anytime you want. Actually was in DM with like a business friend that I've had literally since the beginning of starting my business a couple of weeks ago, and she's like, Stevie, you seems like so lit up and you just love what you do. And she's like, I feel like I'm missing something, like I'm missing that spark, and like I feel like I've built this business that like I'm not passionate about anymore. And like just literally like what you just said, I'm like, you get to choose, like you don't have to do anything. And like sometimes it can feel like, oh, it's so hard to get out of it, but like literally there is like, if you're not, like, I truly believe this, like if you don't feel like lit up and enjoy what you're doing every day, like why don't you just go back to corporate? You know, like what is the benefit of like, you know, doing all of this work, which we have to do because it is like, it's you have to feel lit up by it. So yeah,
I know. I'm just such a huge believer in this. I literally have just like reinvented Scrunch this year. So our influencer platform, like, so we shut down the influencer agency at the end of last year, and we've gone all in on tech and community. And because I'm just feel like community is going to be the big thing, like with all Web3 and NFTs and all of this stuff that's coming out, it's all going to be about community. So I'm kind of trying to anticipate the future, but I'm like, you know, I hated being in the agency services game, and we had this foundation of an amazing tech platform. So I was like, cool, how do we build everything around that and just change? And it was one of those moments where it's like, okay, this is going to be a lot of work to rip it all apart. But I have never felt more inspired by what we're doing. So I was like, sometimes you do just need to burn things to the ground and change.
Yeah. And so you feel like with like the benefit of time, it was the best decision.
Totally. Like I have had this to-do list that will not end. And, you know, and I, you know, then it's really hard because obviously I had COVID last week and I'm feeling very tired, and I'm just a crazy entrepreneur. So that just frustrates me that I can't just work 24 hours a day. But as I look at it, and it's all starting to fall into place now. So everything that we kind of wrote on the page at the beginning of the year, you know, jobs board and community and membership and tech and all this awards we've got going, like it was so much and it was such a big vision, but it's all starting to come together now. And it's like, but also that was scary. Like so Scrunch has shareholders and investors, and I have to sit them down and go, oh, by the way, we're shutting down the agency and we're doing this big thing, and trust me, it's going to work.
Yeah. That's a whole other level of responsibility and things as well, isn't it? Oh my God.
But also, and I'm very lucky that they also see that, you know, I'm the driving force behind that. And if I think something is wrong, they kind of got to back me in that vision a little bit, but also they need me to be as high energy to continue running it and growing it. So so I think that if you can give yourself permission as a business owner to step back and know that, you know what, if you take an afternoon or a day off to go and immerse yourself in some other environment and write things down and get things out of your head and give yourself some space, you kind of surprise yourself what you come up with.
Yes, 100%. Like even just having like the white space to do it. Like I feel like I've just started to have that recently as well. And like the ideas that are popping up, like we're completely rebranding and a whole heap of other things have come from it. And I'm like, if I didn't give myself that, and I only gave myself that through having that experience with Jimmy, with my first little boy, and going, okay, when I have Sonny, I want to make sure that I've got lots of space. And because she's been such an easy baby, it's actually given me so much time to think about like the future of the business and what I want to do and what it looks like. And it's literally like, you're so right. It's transformational. Like I've gotten out of the everyday, and it's like, I have so many amazing ideas which would never have come about if I was stuck in the day-to-day.
Yeah, no, I love that so much. So, okay, so in that vein, how do you make time? Because we've talked, obviously you've got a couple of kids, you've got the business, it's evolved. How do you actually, is there such thing as balance? How do you look after you in the mix there? What's your kind of lens on family, you, business, and how do you kind of manage it all?
So it's so interesting you say this, Danielle. I've actually just recorded a podcast like pretty much on this exact thing because
amazing. We will link to it. Yes.
So a friend of mine, so she came over for coffee last week with her little one, and she was like, Stevie, like, how are you going? Because like literally in the last 6 weeks, I've had Sunny.
Yeah.
I've had like a lot of challenges like with breastfeeding, and that's been a whole thing. We have moved out of our house into another house. So we moved out the day after I got out of hospital. We've like onboarded new staff members. We onboarded like 12 clients into Launchpad. We've started a house build, so signed a building contract, demolished the house.
Oh my
like,
God.
just crazy. Like literally, like from the outside looking in, she was like how are you going? And I was like, it's so interesting. Like I literally, and I am like generally someone that is going at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And I would never say that, like, I've never felt like, there's definitely been times in my business where I'm like, oh my God, like this feels overwhelming. And I don't feel like that at the moment. And like, it was so interesting saying to her, I was like, I actually feel really good. And then I was kind of like reflecting on like, so like, why when there's like more things going on than ever has been ever before. And I think like probably personally, it's more me starting to understand that like, I literally can't do everything, and going, okay, so like, what are the things that are the most important to me, like in this season right now? And so like, you know, that analogy where it's like, you can have 4 burners, but they can't all be burning at full like burn at the same time. You've kind of got to choose and be okay with like letting some things slip. And I think like, whereas in the past I'd try and like keep everything, you know, like juggling the plate, like, it's like, well, it's inevitable that something's going to fall down, and then like you beat yourself up about it, especially if you're a perfectionist, and then it doesn't work out. So it's like a recipe for disaster. And I think like the difference for me now is like, okay, what in this season of my life, which is like having a newborn, having a toddler, having the business, and, you know, all of the different things that are going on, the big 3 priorities for me are family, the house build, and the business, and like the rebrand that is going on at the moment. And that means sacrificing other things that are really important to me. So, you know, socializing, and like, you know, the like deep friendships, which will always be there, but aren't being nurtured to the degree that they are in another season, and being okay with that, and being like, you know, 3 months from now, it's probably going, well, it will look completely different because the priorities will be different. And just like literally going, okay, so like, what are the 3 balls you want up in the air? And it doesn't have to be 16. And then of course, like 13 of them are going to fall. Does that make sense?
Oh my God, absolutely. And I love that too, because, you know, speaking of what makes us happy in business, and then what makes us happy in life, is I think identifying those priorities. And I don't think everyone actually takes a minute to do that. I think we all get in there, oh my God, everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be this, go, 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 go. But it's actually, I think you're spot on. It's like, you know what, that's impossible. So why not pick the most important things to you right now, and give yourself the space to reevaluate it often.
And it doesn't mean that the other things aren't important. They're still important to you. They're just not the it's priorities. It's just not the priority. It's not what you're pouring your energy into right now. And I think like that's the big difference for me, because I was just getting burnt out trying to pour my energy into all of the things, and it's just realistic, and you're literally setting yourself up for disappointment. So that's been the big realization for me. And it's still not perfect. Like those 3 things, like business, family, and house build, there's still 3 really big things, right?
Oh, totally. Like I just missed the top 3, the biggest 3.
yeah. Like they could all be like full time. And I think like giving yourself the grace as well. Like what I've realized is like, I don't have to do it all myself. And I think that's come definitely in the business with hiring, but also like in my personal life, you know, my partner is stay-at-home dad, allowing him to kind of like take that over and do like a really good job at it. You know, like trusting people to, and being okay with not having to do it all yourself has been huge for me, because I've never done that before. And it's like, releasing and like being okay with it, and it's been huge.
Yeah. And you know what? I know that that's hard, but I think, you know, the way to approach it is tiny things, like let go tiny things first, you know, don't try and go, okay, outsource this entire thing or hand over responsibility for X. If you're a perfectionist, if you're a control freak like myself, you know, just the little things I think helps you get into the habit of letting somebody else do something. And I think, I can't even remember if we were recording or not, but it's like you can't expect other people to do it the way you would do it straight off the bat. So being okay as well that something can get done and the same outcome can happen. It just might not be the way you would do it.
That is honestly, that is the biggest thing. And I think like for anyone that's a perfectionist, like being okay with like releasing and knowing it's not going to be done the same way that you would do it, and maybe not to the same standard that you would do it, but is it going to get done? And is it better than it not getting done? Or is it better than you doing it and feeling completely fried through the process, you know? So yeah, I think it's like, it's almost, and I hate to say that you're doing it, but like for me, it's like reducing my expectations a little bit and just being okay with that.
Yeah. And that's it. And it's interesting as well, because so I'm applying this to launching anything and shipping anything. And because I went through a phase of, you know, everything had to be custom built, everything had to be perfect, and I love this about your course is because I know you teach that the entire course doesn't have to be created before you actually sign people up to it. And I've made the mistakes in the past of having everything perfect, everything the way I thought it would be, and it being a total flop because it wasn't what people really wanted. And now I'm like, whenever I have a new idea, I'm like, you have to spend an afternoon getting a landing page up, doing whatever, and you cannot invest any more time or other resources until you sell it. And once you know people want it and you've tweaked it and tweaked it and tweaked it till it sells, then you get to spend time on it.
Yes. 100%. You've got to validate it.
Totally. And I think that that's like with everything, it's just like stop holding on to these expectations that things will ever be done or ever be perfect.
Yeah, totally. I think like, you know, like in the business context with that sort of thing, like that whole, and like I say I'm a recovering perfectionist, like I'm still 100% a perfectionist. That is my thing. But like I do think that like it comes from, it's like, okay, and I've never been a mindset person either. I've always been like, I'm a strategy girl, but now I just like, I so see the mindset side play out in our clients, in me, like everything. But I do think like the perfectionist side, and I've seen it in me and I've seen it enough in clients now as well. I think it's like a manifestation of like, it's fear. So like you hold on to it and it's like a fear of, what if I'm not good enough? What if this is not good enough? And it's like, it holds you, it's like the one thing that really holds you back. And so if you can like get to the point where it's like, no, it's okay. Like, you know, release from like detach from the outcome. Let's just see what happens. No, it's not going to be perfect. No, you know, and that's okay. It actually like, you get like a lot more done. And at the end of the day, isn't it better to get the things done than not to do them at all? Like,
oh, totally. That's because that's it. And that's where regret comes, because you're going, oh, I could have done that. I could have done that. It's like, well, you could have, just do it imperfectly, get it out there and see what happens.
Yeah.
You know, I find you're always surprised at what your level of done and perfectionism is and what everybody else expects. So I always find that I'm shipping something. I'm like, oh, there's like these 10 other things that I want in there, but I'm like, who cares? I'll hit publish and I'll optimize. So I'm all about optimization. I'm like, how every day can I make things better?
1%
That's
better.
That's exactly. So that's my new approach, is stop worrying about things being done because they'll never be done and you'll always have a new idea. So think about, okay, what's the minimum thing I can get out there to get my idea into people's brains? And then how do I make it better every day?
Yeah. It's like literally like, instead of, you know, people are like, oh, think bigger, like think bigger. And I actually think like it stops people. I'm like, no, think smaller, like literally go, okay, yeah, you've got these big dreams and that's amazing. Like, I'm so excited that, you know, in the digital course content, I'm so excited that you want to have $1 million business. And like, I want that for you, but also looking at that can feel overwhelming AF when you're just starting out. And then it's like, okay, well, how can I like, because like that sense of overwhelm is something that I think like it's a word that comes up a lot. It's like, how can you literally go from, I've got this huge vision, how do I not make it overwhelming? Overwhelm comes from like a lack of clarity or not knowing what to do next. And how can you like break it down into like the tiniest little thing and almost think smaller? And then it's like, what is the best next step? Do that. What is the best next step? Do that, you know?
I love that.
Yeah.
And even I love that too, because it's like, you know, you think about, okay, I want to make $1 million. I want to have $1 million a year business. It's like, well, you have to sell the first one to get to that. So just focus on one, just focus on selling it to somebody, because once you sell it to somebody, someone said this in another podcast, they're like, if you can sell one thing, you can sell 100. So it's like, focus on selling the first one and getting that person across the line and understanding about them, and then worry about the rest of the $1 million.
Yeah. And that's the hardest bit. Like, that's where you're like, okay, so I need to like get a fit here. And that's like literally the hardest part. And the same, like in the context of like course creation, like that whole, I need to have an audience, or like I need 1,000 email subscribers or whatever. It's like, and people are like, oh, I feel so overwhelmed with like getting that. And it's like, well, how can you get one email subscriber? Like, do that today. Like and because if you can get that one, whatever channel you use to do that, you can get 10 more. If you can get 10, you can get 10 more. And then before you know it, you're at 1,000. But it's like looking at like the number, or it's like $1 million, or whether it's like 1,000, you know, email subscribers, or whether it's like your first 10 course sales. It literally, like I've seen it so many times, Danielle, it's like, it literally stops people in their tracks, and they're like, but I don't know where to start. And it's like, okay, so what about the next one? And they're like, oh, yeah, okay, so how do I get the next one? It's like, yeah,
I love that so much. That's so good. Okay, so final words of wisdom for our Spark community. So Spark community is early stage business founders, or people who are just thinking about taking the leap into starting their own business. Are there any words of wisdom when people are, I guess, feeling that overwhelm, or feeling like, should I do it myself? Anything you wish you had have known when you first started your business?
Yeah, I think like the biggest thing for me is like, you don't actually need permission to do it. Like, I always thought, like, you know, even sort of going back to before I started a business, it was always like I was waiting for permission, or I was waiting for someone to tell me that like I could do it, or waiting for someone to tell me that I was good enough. And I think like that comes from like, I have so much to say about like the school system and all of that sort of thing. We're kind of conditioned, right?
Yes.
I think like you have to like really be aware of, no, actually, like I have the complete capability to do that. And if I want to do that, I can do that. And you don't actually need anyone's permission to do anything, to like start to quit your job, to like to start a business. Once you've started a business, to pivot if you're feeling, you know, unhappy and uninspired, or like you literally have a choice every day. And I think like, you know, one thing that I think like every bad thing in your life has a silver lining, right? And I think like losing people, or, you know, family members, you know, getting sick, it gives you a unique understanding of how, without getting too deep, but it is getting deep, about how short your life is, and how much potential you have, and how sad it would be if anything happened that you didn't fulfill that potential. And I think like having had if I had have known that 10 years earlier, I think I would have started 10 years earlier, you know. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are probably waiting for permission, or so that's probably the big thing.
Yeah, I love that. I love that sentiment. There's a really good quote. It's like, the time's going to pass anyway. Yeah. So why not do the thing, you know?
Totally. Yeah. And it sounds very like, yeah, you should go, you should do it. But it's true. Like, I think there's so many people that are stuck and, you know, aren't actually doing it. It was literally me. Like, it was me from like 20 to 35, you know? So yeah that's a big thing.
I love it. Well, you are amazing, Stevie. Thank you so much for joining us on Spark TV. There were so many nuggets of wisdom. So I know the community will be grateful, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Danielle. I'm so excited about the new phase of your business as well.
Thank you.